Okay. I just want to make sure it's fitting.
Oh, we have the money, we have to purchase the home because
You're, okay.
we're like us.
Yeah.
So. I don't want to get into the same thing we have here. We purchase the home. And then we can't.
All right.
Good. I like to do that. I use it against unruly land use planning consultants as well. Oh, that's right. Good evening. My name is Gary Darnell, the City of Salem hearings official. For the record, it's a little after 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. This evening we have 3 hearings scheduled. First hearing concerns a consolidated application for a conditional use permit, a class 3 site review, a class 1 and class 2 adjustment, and a class 2 driveway permit. The applicant is Grid Property Management, represented by Ms. Brittany Randall of Brand Land Use. This is case file CU-SPR-AD-DAP 24-08. The second hearing we have scheduled concerns a consolidated application for a conditional use permit and property line adjustment to allow a residential care facility for property located at 211 and 215 Boone Road, Southeast in Salem. The applicant is the Bridgeway Recovery Services, represented again by Ms. Randall, and this is case number CU-PLA 24-09. And finally, the last hearing we have is also a consolidated application for a conditional use permit and a class 2 adjustment to allow a residential care facility for property located at 215 Boone Road, Southeast in Salem. Again, the applicant is the Bridgeway Recovery Services, again represented by Ms. Randall, and this is case number CU-ADJ 24-10. As the staff makes the staff presentation, they will be identifying the approval criteria in each of the cases. Before we begin the hearing this evening, I'd like to describe some of the rules that we follow in the hearing. The hearings we have scheduled are characterized as being quasi-judicial and de novo. Quasi-judicial means that there are certain due process rights that attach to the proceedings, the right to an impartial hearings official decision maker, the right to a written decision that's based on conclusions of law and findings of fact, and the right to testify. De novo means that any new evidence that is applicable to the approval criteria may be accepted for my decision. The rules of evidence that are followed in the circuit court don't apply here. Evidence that's admissible is that which is commonly relied upon by a reasonably prudent person conducting their serious affairs. Evidence that's not relevant, immaterial, overly argumentative won't be considered by the hearings official. It's important to note that you need to raise procedural or substantive issues at this hearing, or if my decision is appealed before the Planning Commission, in order to be able to preserve those issues on appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. The burden of proof in these matters lies with whomever raises the fact or position, and the ultimate burden lies with the applicant to show that all of the applicable criteria have been satisfied, or that it's feasible to satisfy those standards with appropriate conditions. The record in this matter consists of the application, supporting documents, the staff report, any written or oral testimony that's received at this hearing, and if the record is held open any written materials that were submitted during that period of time. If you want to make sure that your material is being considered in the record, please make that presentation obvious when you're offering your testimony. By statute, you have the right to request that the record be held open an additional 7 days. Normally, if that request is made, then the record would be held open longer to allow other parties to respond to any new information placed into the record during that period. Finally, the applicant always gets the last word in terms of summary or rebuttal. You also have the right to request a continuance of the hearing. However, that's discretionary with the hearings official. So you need to show by merely holding the record open for a certain period of time isn't adequate to address any issues that you wish to place into the record. These proceedings are electronically recorded. So I asked that when you testify, first use that podium next to Mr. Bishop. Use the microphone there. And as a preface to your testimony, please give your name for the record. In terms of procedures regarding the testimony, start with the staff presentation. Following the staff presentation, there'll be an opportunity for the applicant or the applicant's representative to testify in support of the application. Following that, others in the audience who wish to testify in support may do so. At the conclusion of that testimony, if there's a representative from the neighborhood association who wishes to testify, they may do so. Following that testimony, there'll be an opportunity for those who wish to testify in opposition to do so. Following that testimony, I'll normally turn to staff and see if staff wishes to address any issue or question that has been raised during the testimony. And then finally, there'll be an opportunity for rebuttal or testimony summary by the applicant or the applicant's representative. Any person who has standing may appeal my decision to the Salem Planning Commission. But to gain standing, that merely means that you have to have testified either in writing or orally before the end of this hearing or before the record closes. The appeal must be made within 15 days from the date of the written decision, when the written decision is mailed. The appeal is de novo to the Planning Commission, which means that you can raise new issues as long as they're relevant to the approval criteria. Finally, the Salem Code and due process considerations require that the decision maker in quasi-judicial decisions be impartial. In that regard, I'd like to indicate that I've had no ex parte contacts, nor do I have any actual or potential conflicts of interest to declare. An ex parte contact is a communication between the decision maker and a party to a matter that the decision maker is adjudicating. That communication goes to the substance of the matter and occurs outside this public venue. Conflict of interest has to do with whether my decision would benefit myself, a family member, or a business that I'm associated with, or would cause a detriment to myself, family member, or a business that I'm associated with. At this time, members of the audience may challenge my impartiality. And are there any challenges to the jurisdiction of the hearing official to hear these matters? Hearing no challenges, I would turn to staff and ask for the staff report. Ms. Carlson?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jamie Donaldson, case manager for the Consolidated Conditional Use Site Plan Review adjustments and driveway approach permits, case number 24-08. At this time, I'd like to introduce the staff report and its attachments, and this presentation be entered into the record.
So accepted.
The request before you tonight is for a conditional use permit to allow gravel surfacing for off-street parking and vehicle use areas where paved surfacing is not required for gravel off-street parking areas through a conditional use permit. Pursuant to SRC 806.035. Along with the conditional use, the request includes a site plan review and 2 driveway approach permits to establish an industrial storage yard for warehousing and distribution uses. The consolidated application also includes 2 adjustments to reduce the required driveway spacing of 370 feet for each driveway approach along the Gilchrist Street southeast. The subject property is over 7 acres in size and located outside of the urban service area. It's located south of Mission Street southeast and just west of the airport. For a little more context, the Interstate 5 freeway is on the far east side, just beyond the limits of this map. The property has frontage along the Gilchrist Street southeast to the south, and it's designated as a major arterial street. It's not easy to see on this larger vicinity map, but the adjacent blue area to the north part of the star there is the Walling Pond and East Fork Pringle Creek. The zoning map here shows the property is zoned IG General Industrial, which is represented in gray. And it's surrounded by other IG zone properties, and some IC, which is industrial commercial, designated in purple, particularly on the west side and across from Gilchrist Street. The general area of the property is predominantly industrial between both the IG and IC zones. Oops, that's the property. Here we have a 2024 aerial photo of the property showing the site as currently vacant with the existing gravel location. This image also offers a better view of the proximity of the Walling Pond and the East Fork Pringle Creek, which is running along the northeast border there. Here is a street view of just a portion of the southwest corner, showing the existing fencing along the west property line and along the Gilchrist Street. The street view of the property looks pretty much the same along all 750 feet of frontage on the Gilchrist as it's currently vacant.
So the entire property is fenced?
Correct. Well, except for the pond area to the northeast.
Right.
Here we have a site plan of the entire property, but it's a little difficult to read, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in and basically that just excludes the Walling Pond and part of the creek area. The overall site plan here shows the majority of the site as existing gravel, which is requested to remain with the conditional use permit. The gravel was originally placed on the subject property under a 2008 permit for 3 new warehouses on the site. However, after the gravel was placed, the development permits expired and no warehouse buildings were ever constructed on the site. So use was never established and the property has remained vacant. The site plan shows 2 driveway approaches along the Gilchrist, which will offer safe circulation through the site using the internal drive aisle. The proposal also includes the site plan review to establish the property as an industrial storage yard, which will accommodate future tenants of a warehousing and distribution uses with outdoor storage needs, and which is permitted in the IG zone. The site plan also indicates vehicle storage is located along the west property line and an employee parking area in the northeast corner, all of which is proposed to remain gravel with the conditional use. This site plan does show the extent of the existing gravel slightly further than where it is today, which I will talk about in a moment. Staff has recommended conditions of approval to mitigate the impacts of gravel surfacing on neighboring properties and the adjacent right-of-way by paving the driveway approaches to a depth that is equal to the width of the driveway as measured from the special setback. Wheel stops to identify employee parking spaces from storage areas where striping is not required, and the site obscuring fence to remain along the west and south property lines to minimize the visual impact to the street and neighboring IC zone property. Other conditions of approval recommended for the consolidated application include dedication of an open channel drainage easement for the adjacent creek, compliance with the vision clearance standards for the driveway approaches, construction details for the bike racks indicated on the plans, and an updated plan showing gravel storage will only occur within the extent of the existing gravel pad on site. To expand on that a little, this photo is an overlay of the applicant's site plan and 2024 aerial imagery, which is included as attachment E in the staff report and referenced in condition 9. To illustrate the difference in where the gravel is indicated on the applicant's existing conditions plan, as opposed to where it is existing on the property today. Because stormwater management requirements have changed since the gravel was placed in 2008, a new grading and erosion control permit to expand the gravel pad area beyond the existing limits would be required to comply with stormwater management for the new impervious area. Therefore, condition 9 asks for an updated site plan showing the existing extent of the gravel or the required permitting to expand it in order to address stormwater requirements, erosion control, and potential wetland impacts. No public testimony was provided during the public comment period from the neighborhood associations, surrounding property owners or tenants, or public agencies. So staff recommends that the hearings officer approve the conditional use permit and consolidated applications subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Thank you.
I think we might want to reword condition number 2. Last sentence talks about hard surface material to a depth that's equal to the width of the driveway. It means the depth of the material needs to be 30 feet.
Correct.
30 feet,
Oh, sorry, the depth is a length from the,
that's not how it reads. It says the depth of the material is equal to the width.
okay, I see what you're
That's
saying.
wrong, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's essentially the depth into the property is what it's meant to be, the length in as it extends into the property. But I can see how that's confusing.
Okay. The extent of the driveway is the same as the width.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I always feel like a big deal when I figure out how to do this.
Don't get extra points.
I almost did it by myself. Let the record show. Good evening, hearings officer. My name is Brittany Randall. I own Grand Land Use in Ward 2, 1720 Liberty Street Southeast in Salem. I'm representing the property owner and the applicant in this case. I wanted to go over some information that Jamie has already covered, just make sure that it's clear for the record. The site has 2 existing access points, one on the east side of the site and one on the west side of the site, both providing access to McGilchrist Street Southeast. The east access has been identified by the city's traffic engineer as a potential hazard due to its being offset from 19th Street Southeast to the south. This application proposal includes the realignment of the eastern access point to align with the street, reducing the likelihood of any vehicular conflict. The relocation of the eastern driveway to further west to align with 19th Street Southeast will reduce the distance between the two driveways on the site to approximately 365 feet, where 370 feet separation is required. So that triggers our adjustment in this case. Both driveways are proposed to be improved as they are currently gravelled aprons. Because McGilchrist Street Southeast is the subject of a current capital improvement project, the applicant has worked with the city to agree upon an alternative driveway design, because all driveways along the street will be removed and replaced as construction of the new street is done by the city. We wanted to talk about how we believe we meet the approval criteria. There are 3 of them. This is a use that is allowed with a conditional use permit pursuant to 806-035 sub H sub 3 and 806-080 sub B sub 2 for gravel surfacing. Criterion 2 is the reasonably likely adverse impact of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized through the imposition of conditions. The subject property is zoned IG. It's the most intensive industrial zoning for Gold9 uses within the city of Salem. The site has existed as a gravel surface site utilized for many different industrial uses, but primarily storage. Sites abutting to the east and west along McGilchrist Street are also zoned. That shouldn't have said to the west, it should have said, sorry about that, are also zoned IG, as are properties to the south. As indicated in staff's presentation, we do have IC property abutting to the west. To reduce the impacts of the gravel surfacing, which is the subject of this conditional use permit, we are proposing to improve the driveway aprons with hard surfacing material to prevent the gravel from being dragged from the site into the right. The applicant's proposal, we believe, mitigates the adverse impact of the gravel on the immediate area. Approval criteria number 3 says the proposed use will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on livability or appropriate development of surrounding property. The subject site is currently developed in a manner proposed to remain under this conditional use permit, which is entirely gravel. With the addition of the hard surfacing on the driveway aprons to reduce the gravel from being pulled out to the right of way. We believe that we've taken the measures to ensure the compatibility of the use of this site is compatible with development of surrounding property. Other sites are utilized in a similar fashion and no residential development exists in the vicinity. So we believe the proposal meets this criterion. We do have a couple of concerns with the proposed conditions of approval. Our first concern lies with condition 2 and this highlighted section. And this, I will admit, this could be just me misunderstanding this. But this says Public Works Design Standards Plan for Commercial Driveway Approaches, which makes me believe that a turnpike improvement, which we agreed upon with the city of Salem's traffic engineers, you can see here in this email, and we'll also submit a copy to you of that email thread. It says it does not make much sense to make them construct frontage improvements and new driveways that we will be tearing out later with the city project. It's okay if they construct some turnpike driveway in the interim. So we were hoping this could be revised to be more clear that we are actually meeting the driveway development standards at this time. Condition number 6, we think is advisory and doesn't need to be a condition. If there's a finding in the staff report discussing the special setback. Condition number 8, at the time that we submitted this application, we believed that bicycle parking was required. However, we have noticed that there is a footnote in 806-9 table, which I have it really small here. It says footnote 1, unless otherwise provided, when required bicycle parking is expressed in terms of the number of spaces per square footage, the square footage shall equal the gross floor area. So we don't have a building here, so we don't believe bicycle parking is triggered. We would like to not install bicycle parking if the hearings officer finds that you agree with this. And I can answer any questions.
You be submitting written testimony.
I will be submitting the email chain from the traffic engineer and a copy of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in the audience who wish to testify in support of this application? Are there representatives of the neighborhood association? Are there those who wish to testify in opposition? Staff have any comments?
Thank you, Laurel Christian, infrastructure planner. The findings in the driveway approach permit do discuss the turnpike improvement that was discussed for the driveways onto McGillcrest, because those are intended to be constructed by the city. So that finding does acknowledge that the driveway approaches in their final form would meet the public works design standards, and we're not anticipating that they construct those driveways now. However, the paving that's on the private property side, which would be past what the city is constructing as they're constructing the driveway approaches. I believe that condition that Ms. Randall was referencing was specific to that paving, and so that pavement would need to meet any applicable standards because the city's not constructing pavement on the private property side. So I fully acknowledge the intent to provide turnpike approaches, and I think that's appropriate at this stage because of the city's project to construct the frontage of McGillcrest. But I do want to ensure that the pavement on the private property side meets the applicable standards.
Please rebuttal. Oh, I'm sorry.
No reason. I just wanted to comment on the bike parking. The standard for the warehousing distribution uses is the greater of 4 or an amount that's based on the gross floor area. So because there's no gross floor area, the larger would be 4. That's what that standard came from.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurel, for the clarification. We have no objection to meeting the standards for pavement on the private side. And just hope that condition can be clarified to include the additional details regarding the turnpike improvement. I respectfully disagree with the bicycle parking. I think that the footnote is very clear that it's based on the square footage of the building. For example, if you had a 10,000 square foot building, you would have not 1, but 4 bicycle parking spaces required. So that's how I read it. And then I would obviously leave that up to the review of the results.
Okay, thank you. There's no further testimony. I'll close the hearing. And we'll move on to the next hearing.
Officer, Bryce. Good evening, Hearings Officer Bryce Bishop with the City of Salem Planning Division, here tonight to present the staff report for the first of two conditional use permits affecting properties that are abutting each other on Boone Road Southeast. The first one involves a conditional use permit for a residential care facility and an associated property line adjustment to adjust the portion of the common property between the property at 211 Boone Road Southeast and the property at 215 Boone Road Southeast. In terms of application processing, I would like to enter the staff report with presentation of the record. Sorry about that. In terms of the conditional use permit, it's a request for a residential care facility, specifically a licensed treatment facility in state law to allow up to 15 individuals on the property that are recovering or struggling with alcoholism and drug and substance abuse. In terms of processing, the application was being complete on August 22nd. Notice was also sent out on to surrounding property owners within 250 feet of the property on the same day, August 22nd. Notice was posted on the property on August 29th. And then the state mandated local decision deadline is December 20th. So in terms of the property, there's two involved in this case, again, 211 and 215 Boone Road Southeast. The property where the residential care facility will be located in this application is the one in the rear, and that's 211 Boone Road Southeast, and that's identified by the white asterisk here on the map. And then there's the property in the front, which is the property that the two the application will share a property line adjustment in common with. In terms of the context of the land uses in the surrounding area, it's a mixture of single-family homes, multifamily developments. There's apartments to the south, single-family to the north, and the east and the west. As you get close, as you go further to the west along Liberty Road, you see some churches, that are serving the community, and there's also an elementary school at the northwest corner of Boone and Liberty Road.
That's Liberty Elementary.
Yes, yeah. And so there is it's a mixture, this area is characterized by a mixture of different land uses, but predominantly residential land, the types of uses that serve residential neighborhoods. In terms of the comprehensive plan designation for the subject property in the surrounding area, it's shown on the map here. So the yellow is single family residential, and the property is single family residential, as well as all the majority of the property around this property to the north, the east and west. To the south across Boone Road Southeast, there's also more single family residential designated. And then there is multifamily designated land as you go further to the west towards Liberty Road. And then of course the zoning map corresponds to the comprehensive plan map. So you see in the single family designated areas, you'll see a mixture of single family residential, which the subject properties are designated, and then also residential agriculture, which is a kind of holdover zone of properties annexed. It comes in as residential agriculture, and then it allows essentially all the same uses that a single family residential zone does, except you can keep livestock and have lots that are 10,000 square feet or greater. But essentially, it's a single family zone as well. And then you have RM2, which is our mid-level multifamily zone to the south across Boone Road and to the west. So the property itself, the two properties together total approximately 62 acres. There are two existing homes on the property. They were previously used as a nonprofit shelter for victims of domestic violence, and that property has been sold now, and the new owners Bridgeway Recovery, and they're seeking to do a different, albeit a different use, similar use in terms of providing shelter areas for folks to recover in a controlled and secure environment in a residential setting to help that transition and recovery. Only interior improvements are proposed with this application, other than the potential for, as staff is recommending, to condition bicycle racks to be provided on each of the lots. There are no trees on the property as shown on the aerial here, so there's no issues with preservation of trees in accordance with our tree ordinance. The site is also flat, so there's no landslide hazard susceptibility or wetlands or waterways present. Here's a quick shot, showing the two homes. The one in the front is 215, and the one in the back, subject to this application, is 211. And so it's served by a flag lot access way, which is a private driveway. It serves both homes. This used to be a petition that had 3 lots, and then later on the 2 lots in the back were consolidated into the one lot that is the 211. Boone Road Southeast property. And it's a collector street, it is a collector street, that is one of the requirements in order to cite a conditional use permit in the single family residential zone is that the property has to be located on a lot with frontage on the collector street. As identified in the staff report, the property in the back, even though it's a flag lot, it currently is served by an easement across the property in the front, so it doesn't have any physical lot frontage onto the collector street. The property line adjustment adjusts the line between the two properties so there is a physical span of land that goes from the lot in the back to the road, the Clark Street, and therefore qualifies for the conditional use permit under our single family residential zone. As mentioned previously, it's a licensed residential care facility which is providing treatment for individuals that are struggling from alcoholism and drug and substance abuse. That is specifically allowed in the RS zone as a residential facility. We specifically say that a residential facility as defined by Oregon Revised Statutes 197-660 is allowed as a conditional use when it has that front on the collector street. And 197-660 defines a residential facility as a facility that provides residential care, training or treatment, or any combination of those things on a property. So for residential care facilities, they're limited at 6 to 15 residential homes, which are a lighter version of the residential care facility allowed to 5. And those are permitted in the zone if they're at 5. But this is, since there's more people, it's in the higher category, but it is allowed in the zone as a conditional use. So as identified in the staff report on pages 6 to 10, this proposal does meet the criteria for the conditional use permit. It is a conditional use in the zone. Any reasonable or likely adverse impacts can be minimized, and it is consistent with the character of the surrounding area, which this is a residential use under our code. That is, and therefore that's why the RS zone allows that. There was some testimony provided that was concerned about the intrusion of a business into the community, and while yes, it is operated by a business entity, it is still a treatment facility that is operating in a residential fashion. And under state law, the state wants those type of facilities to be located in residential neighborhoods so they can provide, that treatment for folks, and that's also a protected right under the Fair Housing Act to people that are recovered from alcohol and drug abuse are a protected class, and therefore that's why residential treatment care facilities are allowed in residential zones where multi-family and single family are allowed. In terms of the existing conditions, again, we have the house in the front, and then the separate house in the back. This is the proposed facility for this application, served by the Flagler Access Way on Boone, and then there is a turnaround here. There is a existing accessory structure around the subject property that when it was used as a shelter for women recovering from domestic violence. I think it was used for animals structure, but that would not be part of this proposal. That is just being used as a residential care facility. And then the property line adjustment takes the existing property today, as you see outlined in blue, without frontage on the street, and it moves this portion of the property line from here and extends it down to here, so you end up with a lot that does have frontage on Boone Road, as well as the neighboring property to the east that also has frontage on Boone Road. The property is located within the Fairway Neighborhood Association. No comments were received from that body. It's also similarly done within the Homeowners Association. We did receive 2 public comments. One that was originally included in the staff report that was received prior to the staff report being published, and then a second one that occurred after. And they both expressed concerns about the potential types of people that would be treated at the facility or housed, and the potential for impacts on property values, concern about an increase in theft and crime, and the concern about livability in the neighborhood, impacts on children in the area who are living and also who are having to walk on the facility to go to school. And then, as identified in the staff report, again, this is not a commercial use. It is a residential use. We classify it as residential in the code. So therefore, and then the RSN allows it as such. So we feel that based on requirements of state law, how it's classified, under the code and the previous use of the property as a shelter, that this is an appropriate place for the use and meets the criteria for both conditional use permit and property line adjustment. We recommend that it be approved subject to The conditions of approval to one, require bike parking to be installed in order to meet the code. To obtain site plan review approval to officially change the use from the nonprofit shelter to residential care facility. And then also to have the PLA property line adjustment deeds and survey recorded prior to site plan review approval. To make eligible use there.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to hear from the applicant's representative.
That's 2 in a row, record.
Who's counting?
Good evening again, hearings officer. My name is Brittany Randall with Brand Land Use. We are operating out of Ward 2, 1720 Liberty Street Southeast in Salem. Okay. We are representing the applicant, Bridgeway Recovery Services, who is submitting an application for a property line adjustment to conditional use permits to utilize 211 and 215 Boone Road as residential care homes for adults recovering from addiction. The property line adjustment included in this application is necessary, as Bryce went over in great detail, so I will save you, skip on by. The properties, again, are designated single-family residential, making the site subject to the provisions listed in 511. The subject properties were previously owned and operated by Center for Hope and Safety as nonprofit shelters serving victims of domestic violence. This, I want to make clear, is a totally separate entity and a separate use from what the site was previously utilized for. We'd like to go over the conditions of approval, the approval criteria for the conditional use permit. In accordance with Salem Revised Code, Chapter 511.005, Table 511-1, this use is allowed with a conditional use permit when serving 5 or more people. So that criterion is met. Criterion 2, the reasonably likely adverse impacts of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized through the imposition of conditions. The applicant believes that there are likely no adverse impacts on the immediate neighborhood due to a number of existing factors. The subject site has historically been used, utilized in a similar capacity, and has successfully operated in the neighborhood. Most of the individuals being served by Bridgeway Recovery do not have a vehicle on site, which minimizes the likelihood of vehicular congestion. Thick, mature landscaping exists between the existing structures, screening use from adjacent developments, and where there is not landscaping present, the site is screened by an opaque cedar fence. No exterior alterations are proposed or needed in order to increase the capacity of service in this location. And the proposed expansion will benefit the immediate neighborhood and the greater Fayrite community by helping individuals experience addiction become contributing members of our society. Oops. Criterion 3. Skip over. We believe that this use is reasonably compatible with the livability of surrounding developments, and there are no adverse impacts as we described previously. Most of the individuals served don't have a vehicle, as we discussed, and have additional information here. One of the dwellings will serve men, the other will serve women. Qualified individuals who are accepted into the residential program are not accepted directly from custody. That was a question. of a commenter, are they coming straight from incarceration? It's a hard word. The answer is no. And then each of the residents will be staffed by Bridgeway Recovery at all times. We agree that the conditions proposed by staff are appropriate and have no objections. And I can answer any questions.
But you indicated that, well, let me back up. Bridgeway, does it have other facilities similar to this in Oregon?
Many other facilities in Salem and throughout Oregon. Do you have? No. Many in Salem and actually one just down the road on the.
Okay. Written testimony from Ms. Renander talked about her concern for people that don't make it through the program and issues they might create in the neighborhood. What is the history with the other facilities in Salem?
I will have our client speak to that. Thank you.
Good evening, can you hear me?
I need your name.
Renee Hancock, Chief Operating Officer with Bridgeway Recovery Services. So individuals who are struggling in our services, we wrap a lot of services around them to try to help them initially. But if they're not going to be successful, we then coordinate their exit from the home and find transitional housing elsewhere. We have transitional housing in neighborhoods in Oregon. And so we will have, they will not just be kicked out and onto the streets in the neighborhood. That's just something that we're a trauma-informed care agency, and that is absolutely the opposite of that approach. So if an individual is struggling, say someone brings paraphernalia onto, they have a visitor and that person brings paraphernalia onto the property, that person is immediately discharged and we have them leave. Not discharged to the streets, but we find them in what we call an E-bed, which is an emergency Oxford House bed, and they'll go stay the night in one of those until they can find the next place. Does that answer that question thoroughly enough?
Yeah, there was some reference to police having some problems with substance abusers that didn't quite finish the program. And I have no idea whether that's true or not. And I guess I'm looking for feedback from you as to your experience with your clients.
So we have a home currently on Liberty Road, which is just right around the corner. Sure, up there. Right across the street from the church on Liberty Street. So you can literally walk down the ways and see the other house that we have, and it's been in, it's a men's residential treatment home. It's been in place about 7-8 years. We've had one complaint, and that's when we brought our food truck to celebrate. I don't remember what we were celebrating, but the generator was too loud for the neighborhood. Aside from that, we've gotten no complaints from the neighborhood for that home, so that's just one example.
That home serves how many clients?
Pardon?
How many clients were served by that?
We generally have 8, well, not generally, each of our homes has 8 individuals. We really find that number 8 individuals in a home, and then we have at least 1 staff on overnight per home. So 211 and 215 will both have a staff member on staff 24/7. During the day, there's a counselor, a mentor, plus our milieu staff.
So the clients stay overnight.
Yes.
And about how long is generally the process take to?
Yeah, so length of stay,
Yeah,
that's generally 30 to 45 days. And then they transition to an Oxford House or other housing.
and, Ms. Randall indicated that generally the clients don't have their own cars with them. What if they do? Do you have adequate parking for them? Or-
We have parking elsewhere on our own property that we have they sign a waiver and have their cars there, so they don't park their vehicles there ever. We'll have visits, individuals come and visit, but that's during the day in a very controlled amount of people visiting at one time. And we're very careful on who comes to visit.
Thank you. Are you through?
I think so. We did want to submit our presentation to the record. But otherwise, that concludes our presentation.
Are there others who wish to testify in support of the application? Are there any representatives from the neighborhood association? Next, we have an opportunity for those who wish to speak in opposition. I have two individuals who signed a sign-up sheet, and this Jeanette Lee. Could you go to the microphone, please, and offer your testimony?
I'm Jeanette Lee. Having just received this information today and hearing what I've heard, I have not prepared what I'm going to say, so I've just put down a few things that I'm confused about. There's one part here on attachment C. And I feel like, and I don't mean just you, that it kind of watching into the debate last night. I feel like it's you against me or whatever, but I live in a mobile home in a park adjacent to their driveway. Bristol Park, and there are about 65 units in that park. And it's for 55 years and older, and I know quite a few of them that are 80 and older. And so the single family use doesn't seem like that's what this facility that they're proposing would be. And near on this paperwork, how can they skirt the zoning? Like whatever wording, I can't understand all that language. The home should be sold and Bridgeway should go closer to a person is saying, somebody wrote that the home should be sold. And Bridgeway can close an industrial area like Front Street, keeping the drugs. This is a line I'm looking at, the zoning. Keeping the drugs and crime away from all of our children. I added a word, and from me. The school, I mean, they are so close, they're 2 blocks away. School right at the back of the property. There's a fence and there's a park. And then just really the school has its playground again, right? I don't know, 5, 6 blocks away. And it just, bothers me to have, you spoke of these people, I don't know exactly what you just recently said, but they are going to plan housing recently released inmates to assure me that nothing will happen, but this is not possible. That they can't keep that promise by allowing a higher population in the home. And the chances of crime keep going. I'm sorry, and the chances of crime and drugs. This used to be a beautiful neighborhood, but my family subdivision and those home. Really, that's something that was written in here, I'm sorry. The word inmate, yet I'm being told these people are not coming in directly. It says inmates that go to the halfway home are those who have served hard time for over 10 years. I'm sorry, I normally would never speak, I'm petrified right now. And it would have been nice to have this information, I don't know what that meant, with one thing I got in the mail that I was supposed to go out for me to drive and go places, I'm 81, I'm not ancient, but I'm getting there. And to read this stuff is not easy for a layman. In fact, I didn't even know what is the word Breckenridge Bridgeway. Now, immediately when that word was told to a few friends, whoa, whoa, whoa. But even looking here, I wonder how many in the park really understood from the letter we got in the mail what was going to be happening. Nowhere did they use the word rehab. So I just feel really, because I'm surprised there aren't more people here. We don't have a clubhouse, we don't have a place where we plan a meeting, but I think there would have been more if they really realized what is going on. And I've already gone out, spent $1,000, and then I have to spend more on installing a Ring doorbell. As I was leaving my place today, I was told that somebody came up from my house. Minor, but they're out there. Took my hose and used it to fill the radiator. They were having trouble. And I don't know who these people were who knew to come to my house. I'm concerned about all kinds of people just wandering our neighborhood. Across the street from me, just across Boone. There's an apartment complex of about 90, I think. Many, many, many children, many. And that's not even 3 blocks away. And then, my place, there are 65 and we're all old, we're vulnerable. We're not very strong and anyhow, it's just scary, it's super scary to me. I'm going out and buying a Ring doorbell and I don't know what I wanna do next. And I guess that's all I have to say. I will read, reread and read again. I don't like to have to pay attorneys and do this, this and this. But I will try to find out what can I do to get, I didn't read all of this today when we got here. And I'm just concerned, overly concerned. I've been pretty, sort of nervous, scared. I'm concerned to having these people around that have spent 10 years, over 10 years, inmates, and so a hard time for over 10 years. And I will stop with that because I could ramble on for 2 hours once I read this paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's real.
Ms. Jamie Reel.
Hi, my name is Jamie and I'm Jeanette's caregiver. My big concern is the screening they do. I understand the importance of any home recovery. How do you keep the sex offenders away? That's my big concern is what the screening process is. That's about it. That's my big concern, just because of the little people around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff have any final comments?
I do not.
Ms. Randall?
Thank you, Mr. Hayes officer. Just a couple of comments. Number one, the homes are for recovery, so drugs on site, drugs or alcohol on site is never tolerated here. Number two, folks in recovery are not always criminals. And number three, background checks are conducted on individuals who are admitted into the residential programs. And then finally, we have a Bridgeway Recovery Home in this neighborhood that has operated there for 8 years that had one complaint about a generator from the food truck and no other complaints. That's all I have.
Thank you. If you would like to go back to the microphone. Please, operable.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
This is awful. I have a bad memory and I've forgotten what I want to ask, and forgive me. Oh, speaking of the other facility in our area. Where I live now, I mean, I see 4 AM, 6 AM, 3 AM, 1 o'clock in the middle of the day. I see easily 10 people just strolling around, doing nothing, and not nice, but kind of looks like they don't have a good purpose for being there. So just adding more makes me nervous. Thank you.
Ms. Randall, any
Do I need to turn
comments?
it off?
Yeah, that thing.
Thank you.
Nothing further from the applicant.
Okay. Close the record on this application and move on to the third and final hearing.
Hey, good evening, Harris, Hearings Officer again, Vice Bishop with the City of St. Albans Planning Department, and this, for the sake of brevity, is essentially the same presentation that I had previously given for the other property. This is the one in the front, located at 215 Boone Road Southeast, so it's the one that directly fronts onto Boone, and same zoning, same comp plan, everything is the same here, except it would be the second facility, and the one difference is that this application also includes an adjustment to increase the maximum lot coverage for the existing home. So when the home was originally built, it was a single family dwelling, and it was used as a nonprofit shelter. And under our code, both of those uses have a maximum lot coverage of 60%. We have a different lot coverage for, other than the single family dwelling and the nonprofit shelter, for any other use that's allowed, it's a maximum of 35%. So the change of use from the nonprofit shelter to this does change the maximum lot coverage. So the existing about 50% lot coverage of the building and the detached or the garage that's on the north end, that results in more than 35%. And so an adjustment has been requested to that. And in terms of the adjustment approval criteria, the main one is that the proposal will equally better meet the intent of the standard that's being adjusted. And in this case, the lot coverage of 50% would have, complied when it was originally constructed as a home, complied when it was a nonprofit shelter. And the change of use is still really a residential use, and it's we feel that the intent is still equally met. It could be a residential home in the future as well if the property is sold and somebody wants to just use it as a residence again. So we feel that it's not like a barber shop or a beauty salon or other limited non-residential uses that are allowed in the zone, and it is essentially still a home. So the proposed lot coverage as it exists today, and no changes are proposed, equally meets the intent of that standard. Nothing's really changing. So we are recommending approval of that with two conditions on this one, that the bike parking be established for the proposed use, and that they get site plan review approval for it. But everything else is the same as the other case.
Good evening, hearings officer. My name is Brittany Randall with Green Land Use, 1720 Liberty Street Southeast, for your record. I have nothing to add. All of our previous testimony is applicable in this case, and we are supportive and understanding of staff's conditions.
Are there others who wish to offer testimony in support of the application at this time? We know there's no representative from the homeowners association. Ms. Lee, you have an opportunity to testify again.
No, thank you.
Ms. Rio? You good? Comments from staff?
No.
Any rebuttal? Nothing? Okay, we'll close this public hearing and all the hearings. Thank you for your testimony tonight. And I'll try to get the decisions out next week.